We're here today with Lawrence Larry McGhee, an illustrious entertainer from the 40s and 50s. And Lawrence, when I met you, I was enthralled with your story of being a young man and all the entertaining you did and the people you met. Please recount those times for me.
Sure, be glad to. I started here in Philadelphia in and around 1947. Before that, by dancing in the different clubs, that is regular dancing, with the different big bands coming in and all of that. And eventually my partner and I decided to form an act because we drew a lot of people knew us, and we went on from there. So somewhere in 47 we formed the act and we named it the Zooboppers. Now a lot of people ask me why the Zooboppers. And right now I can't think back and tell you just how the Zooboppers came about, but it was the Zooboppers. And we, in time, got to meet a lot of the name entertainers and all of that. And as time went on, a lot of these entertainers introduced us to different managers and road managers and all of that. And eventually, we hooked on with such entertainers, big bands as Lionel Hampton, Erskine Hawkins, and those two we entertained with at various times. And that was quite an experience in itself. We weren't originally established as legitimate entertainers back then. As time went on, we did, and we had music arranged, which cost a lot of money, a lot of pictures taken of us and all of that, so that they could be posted on the theaters and nightclubs where we entertained and all of that. And from 47, 49, 50, 51, and a short part of 52, we entertained in such places as the Baby Grand in New York, the Cotton Club then in New York, Small's Paradise in New York, here in Philadelphia, the Palatine Bar, which was at 40th and Filbert. There we entertained with Ruth Brown at the end of her engagement there, which was 22 weeks because of an accident that she was involved in. The last 4 of those weeks we entertained in there with her, with 2 weeks in the beginning, with an option of a week and another option of another week, and we stayed with her for 4 weeks. From there we went on the road with her for a short period of time. Blanche Calloway was her manager. And through Blanche, we got to meet a lot of different managers and agencies, which we didn't know in the beginning, such as Arthur Bryson out of New York, Red and Tan out of New York. Here in Philadelphia, well, the names are not coming to mind right now, but eventually they will. Through Blanche and the people that we met through her eventually took us out on the road. We went south in the beginning, Baltimore, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Richmond, Virginia, the Hippodrome in Richmond. Stayed there at Slaughter's Hotel in Richmond. We was there with Larry Darnell, and I don't remember the group that we was with. But from there we went south, we went into Atlanta. From there we came back and was off for a short while. Got a call, went into New York, worked Small's Paradise, met Arthur Bryson, big manager then. And you have to remember, going back in that time, era and time, black entertainers didn't have white managers and white agencies. It was hard to get into them. Eventually we did, but in the beginning, for those first 2 years, we didn't. Arthur Bryson was one of the biggest black agents in that time. He sent us west. And we worked quite a few places, states in the West, clubs, mostly clubs, because theaters was not the big thing. for black entertainers going back in then, going west. South, yes, you had the Chitlin Circuit, which was a part of Philadelphia, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Washington, Richmond, Norfolk, and Atlanta. That was the Richmond Circuit. Then you branched off from there and went into different clubs. We did all of this going into 49, somewhere around the late part of 49, we went into the Baby Grand in New York, which was Nipsey Russell, then Harry Belafonte, Betty Brisbane was the exotic dancer, and we stayed there for, I remember, about 3 weeks. And if you remember, going back in the late 49, maybe early 50, Harry Belafonte came out with the great hit Calypso, and from there he went on up to the top and have been up there ever since. From that point, 49, we messed around, flipped around, and eventually got hooked in with some white clubs in New York as well as in Pennsylvania through white agencies that we were lucky to hook up with that liked us, through people, I guess, that saw us in various places and talked to their agents and managers and all of that, and eventually hooked us up, and we went on to work in those kind of clubs. After that, moving on into early 50, things got a little bit tight, got slow and all of that, and eventually, January 5th, I went into the service and served for 2 years with Uncle Sam, defending our country during the Korean conflict. Came out, went back into show business. My partner, he had moved on and was doing other things, and I did some MC work myself, worked some of the clubs here in Philadelphia, hooked up with such people as Raymond Bruce. He was a disc jockey, the first black DJ here in the Philadelphia area. Kay Williams, better known as Kid Swingster, Randy Dixon. Those were your three biggies. Here in Philadelphia, they had radio shows on WHAT and WDAS, and also did MC work in different clubs and all that, which I worked along with them. My biggest time going back then, this was in 53, and was more or less the end of my tenure in the business with Kay Williams in a club, the Dreamland in New Jersey, which was one of the largest clubs, black clubs, in New Jersey. He had quite a few shows there, and I would MC those shows. And the name is not coming to mind right now. You got to remember, 81 years old. There's a lot of things that I forget. Blueberry Hill. What was the singer?
I Found My Thrill.
Blueberry Hill. What was his name?
I can't think of no, he had a
pompadour,
right?
Yeah, right. He was from New Orleans.
Process. I know who you mean. I can see him.
Right. Well, he was on the show. He was the biggest entertainer.
Have you said Fats Domino?
Fats Domino.
Okay.
He was the largest and biggest entertainer that I emceed for going back at that time. It was quite a show there. And it was one of those weekend kind of deals, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the place was jammed. Oh, it was packed. It made me feel good. And back in those days, in 53, I did such places as the Dreamland, Dewdrop Inn, Town Tavern, that was a white club there in Delray, New Jersey, and a few of the spots here, the OV Cater here in Philadelphia, the Mercantile in Philadelphia. Those places eventually phased out, and that was the end of my career in show business. Mm-hmm. I got to meet a lot of great people outside of show business. great fighter at that time, Gil Turner. And he and I became very good friends, and I traveled a lot of places with him, a lot of his fights and all of that. Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis. Never thought that I would get to meet those two guys, but I did, and we partied all together going back in the 50, 52, part of 52 when I came out of the service, 53, 54. And then shortly after that, I went on into the work field and had to make a living. And I've been working ever since, but I did keep in contact with a lot of the entertainers and the fighters and all that I met at those times. And basically, that's it.
Oh, yeah? Well, who's still around?
Well, who's still around today in show business, all your big bands have passed on. The last of the big bands was Lionel Hampton, and he passed on about 3-4 years ago. I can go back with Hamp. Hamp had asked me early on to team up with a group that he had, Reds and Curly. Fantastic group. They tap dance. They played drums. They played the piano, along with Hamp, Two Finger Boogie, with Milt Buckner, and all of that. I could do all of that. I could do the whole act. But my partner and I, we had a good act going. We were trying to get on top, and Hamp saw that too because we worked with Hamp. And Hamp had asked me, you know, at some point in time, would I want to break off and team up with Curly, because I was Reds, looked almost like him. I could do everything that Reds did in that act, including dancing on my toes with a regular pair of shoes on and do a salt shoot. I couldn't do the tap side, but I could salt shoot. And played a two-finger boogie up there on the piano with Hamp and Milt Buckner. Played the drums, but I ad-libbed a lot with the drums because I could not play all the different riffs on the drums just by playing. I could do all of that. My partner, which his name was Messy Bessie after we broke the act up, he could play the drums, but only because by ear. It's something that he always wanted to do and play. And a lot of times in a lot of the clubs that we worked at, when we were off, he would get up on the drums and play with the band and all of that. Did pretty good. Did pretty good. I'd like to know where that guy is today, if he's still with us. His name is Bobby Armour. Hell of a nice guy. A little older than I am. And we came up more or less together. We went to all the different dances and drew circles and all of that. And here's something that I would like to add in there. When I was roughly the age of about 17, 18 is when I really started. We had 3 young ladies that used to travel with us. We used to go to the Savoy Ballroom, dance here. They had the boat rides with the dancers on and all the big bands, Hamp, Count Basie and all. This is when I first met them. I didn't know them, but this is when I first met them. And we loved to play, and we get into big circles. Well, there was a young lady, Viola, called her Mama Tute. And she was on a large side. Bearing in mind, I only weighed soaking wet maybe around 120, about 120 pounds. I was 17, 18 years old. And she would break the circle, back up about 15, maybe 20 feet, and run with all that she had. Jump, throw her legs around my hips. And people said, oh, they would just think that I was going to get squashed. But there was a little secret into handling her weight. No sooner than I felt the touch of her thighs on my hips, all I did was turn to my right and just bounce. And I'd only bounce a few minutes because her weight would take me down if I stayed too long. Let her go, and we go ahead on it. And man, the people, they would rave. And this was one of the things back then that my partner and I saw, because we would do a lot of different things on the dance floor. And would draw circles even when it was during intermission. And we would draw, and we found that people enjoyed us. This is why and where and at the time that we got together and said, let's get an act together. Well, anybody that may hear this program can think back to Ridge Avenue, Jefferson and Ridge, was a club there, Small's Paradise. One day we were sitting on the steps there in Montgomery and Wellington, just talking. I said to Bobby, I said, you know, you're older than I am. You know all the places in Philadelphia. Why don't we get ourselves together? Because we clown together when we go to Atlantic City and all these different places. Then you had the $1 Million Pier, and there was a Jewish place, and all the Jews used to draw to us and the clowning that we used to do. And they loved it, and we loved doing it. Why don't we try and see what we can do with the night? And so we did. And a few weeks later, we would rehearse right on the street, and we would rehearse. And we came up with the song, Red Top. And we went into Small's Paradise, and we asked for an audition. And that's where it all started.
Wow.
And this was in 1947.
Great.
And from there on, and we drew a crowd there, believe it or not. Smalls kept us there. We stayed there for roughly about 6 weeks. And Smalls wanted to manage us. He knew clubs in New Jersey. That's where originally we all started, with him taking us in that big Buick that he had into New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And then he would always say, I don't care where you work, always come back to my place, Small's Paradise. That's and he would advertise it.
And was it a big place down there?
Yes, Small's Paradise had a nice stage. And then you had the chorus girls, had 3 chorus girls. Jimmy Tisdale, which was one of the lead local bands in Philadelphia. We loved to work with Tizzy, because he had a sax player, tenor sax. He could get into Red Top and really get the beat going and really get us going. Well, not only was he the show band there, but he was the show band throughout a lot of places in Philadelphia and locally. And as time went on, especially in some of the white clubs, we got these different groups to go in with us. I'd form our own shows. He even took shows as far south as Norfolk, Virginia. Mm-hmm. Some of the entertainers here that was not going anywhere no more than locally, mm-hmm. by us building a name in these different places, they would ask me, because they didn't have entertainers coming in. They only had local entertainers there. Every now and then they would get a named group coming in, like our group, mm-hmm. Wynoni Harris, Larry Darnell, Ruth Brown, Josephine Baker. Not Josephine Baker, oh, come on. I got some pictures here somewhere with her. These kind of groups would come in sparingly. And the people liked our act and fell in love with us there in Norfolk. And I spent a lot of time there in Norfolk. I got to know a lot of people there. And then one day, Cub Turner, the club that we worked, they said, Larry, when you go back to Philadelphia, can you form some people to come down, take my number, call me collect, let me know what you have, and when you're ready to come down, and I'll pay all your expenses here, no problem.
Wow.
Cub was big in Norfolk. He was a banker, numbers banker, and all of that kind of stuff, you know.